Hi everyone, this is Mrs. Huggins. I just wanted to do a little review for you about how to simplify fractions and then how to simplify fractions when they are attached to a mixed number, which you're going to find out is no different than simplifying a fraction without a mixed number. When we are talking about simplifying fractions, we are talking about making equivalent fractions where the numbers are smaller, and we do that through the process of division. We have learned that we can make equivalent fractions by multiplying or dividing. If we're choosing to multiply, let me get my pen working here. If we're choosing to multiply by any given number, let's say we could multiply both the top, the numerator, and the denominator by 2 and get an equivalent fraction of 16/24. That is definitely not a simpler fraction, but it is an equivalent fraction. It represents the same amount of pieces of a whole. I could say 8/12 again. I could multiply it by 3 if I wanted to. I really could pick any number I wanted to and make it an equivalent fraction. Once again, by multiplying, I am not making it simpler. I am now having more pieces in total and more pieces of that total. So I've made that a more complicated fraction. If I multiply to have more pieces, I need to divide to have fewer pieces or simplify. So to do that, the thing that you need to do is find the greatest common factor. And I know that you remember all the work that we have done finding factors of numbers. We need to figure out which factors 8 and 12 have in common. They have several factors in common. If I factor out 8, I know that has 1 and 8 as a pair of factors, 2 and 4 as a pair of factors. And that's it. 12 has 1 and 12. It has 2 and 6. It also has 3 and 4. Now, if you will look, I see that both numbers have 2 as a factor. Both numbers have 4 as the factor. I want to use my greatest common factor to divide to get it to the absolute simplest form possible. I know that 4 is the greatest number that both of those have in common as a factor. So I can divide my top and my bottom by 4. So 8 divided by 4 will become 2. 12 divided by 4 will become 3. I know that I can't simplify that any further because 2 is a prime number, 3 is a prime number. They have no other factors other than themselves. Now I want to show you another way to get to that point. If you are seeing two even numbers, I think you can see pretty easily that both of them are even and therefore can be divided by 2, of course, if they're both even, which would give us 4, 6. And you might think, well, I'm done. But you're not done, because if you notice, both of these numbers are still even numbers and can yet again be divided by 2. Apologize, I'm running out of room here. So my equivalent fraction now is 2/3. So if you see here, I end up, when I finally get down to the very end, I end up with 2/3. In this case, I picked my greatest common factor, so I only had to do one division problem, which was divided by 4. Over here, I did divided by 2, and then I divided by 2 again, which would be the same thing as dividing by 4, but I did it in 2 steps. Both of those processes will get you to the same answer. It is more efficient to use the greatest common factor that you see here, and if you need to draw out a little factor tree for more complicated fractions, you can do that. Let's look at another example just with a basic fraction. Okay, let's look at this fraction of 9/15. I'm going to try to reduce that fraction. And I'm going to do that by looking for the greatest common factor. Again, if you look at our factors, and you may know this, I hope you know your factors in your head. If you know your factors in your head, then kudos to you. That's where we want you to be. I'm going to factor out 9 and 15. If you can't figure it out, then you need to go back to that old method of factoring out your numbers. 1 and 9 are sets for 9, and 3 and 3. Those are my only factors for 9. My factors for 15 are 1 and 15, and 3 and 5. Those are my only factors for 15. If I look to find a common factor, I see that they both have 3 in common, and that's it. So the greatest common factor is also the only factor, which is 3. So here, that is the only number that you can divide both the top and the bottom by and get an equivalent fraction. 9 divided by 3 is 3, and then 15 divided by 3 is 5. So 3/5 gets us down to our lowest point. There is no other common factor we can divide by. So we have found our simplest fraction. Now, sometimes you might be asked to simplify a mixed number, and all a mixed number is a combination of a whole number and then the fractional part of the next number. So we are in between the number 2 and 3. We've gone past 2, we have 2 wholes, and then we have 4/6 of the next whole. We have not yet gotten to 3. So if you are asked to simplify a mixed number, all you have to do is simply ignore the whole. The whole is as simple as it can get. You have here 2. You don't even need to worry about that 2. We just need to worry about simplifying this part, this fraction. And I look at that fraction and I immediately see that they're both even. I know that they can both be divided by 2. And also, because I know my factors, that's the only thing they can both be divided by. There is no greater common factor than 2. So I'm going to divide 4 by 2, and that gives me 2. I'm going to divide 6 by 2, and that gives me 3. So my simplified fraction is 2/3. I combine that with my whole number that didn't even need to be changed, and there is my simplified mixed number. The only thing that's different with this process is that you just need to keep the whole number with this new simplified fraction. And don't forget, don't take out that whole number when you write your answer. You don't want to leave me with just a fraction. Make sure that whole number stays in with the fraction. One last example for you. Sometimes you're going to get a fraction that can't be reduced, and you are already at the simplest form. So I look at this number 3 8/9, and I'm being asked to simplify this fraction if possible. And remember, when you are given a problem and you solve it, I always want you to check and see if it can be simplified. You really need to be always writing your answers in the simplest form possible. So what I'm going to do here, just to prove this to you, is I'm going to factor out 8, and I'm going to factor out 9, because it's not just prime numbers that can't be factored. You're asking yourself, do they have any factors in common? And if I look at 8 and 9 and I want to factor those numbers, 8 is 1 and 8, and then 2 times 4. Those are our factors for 8. I know that 9 is 1 and 9, and 3 and 3. Now there are lots of factors, but if you'll notice, there's no 1, 8, 2, or 4 over here, and there is no 1, 9, 3, or 3. Well, actually, there is a 1. The only factor they both have in common is 1. But why would we divide by 1? We wouldn't want to divide by 1. Why would we? Look, 8 divided by 1, what do you get? You still get 8. 9 divided by 1, you still get 9. You have not changed your fraction at all. If the only thing you can divide both of these numbers by is a 1, then you're done. You're at your simplest fraction. So even though parts of your fraction may have many factors, if they don't have anything else in common other than 1, then you are finally at your simplest form. I hope that you found this video helpful.